All right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this special edition of Tuesday Takeovers for Racial and Social Justice. Today, we are recognizing LGBTQ History Month with a panel on coming out stories. So you'll hear coming out stories from our panelists and a little bit on how to support your LGBTQ plus colleagues in the workplace. So to start off, as always, let me just pull it up here. We would like to start with the land acknowledgement, which is always a little interesting in this virtual format. CTA wants to open this meeting by acknowledging with respect that the land we are on today is the traditional and ancestral homelands. I should say that the land I am on today is the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Yokuts tribe. We recognize and thank the Yokuts peoples as the original stewards of this land. And something that I like to see in virtual meetings is if you would like to, sorry, trying to multitask here. I put a link in the chat where you can look up which ancestral land you are on, and you are welcome to put that in the chat if you'd like, since I assume that we are not all on Yokuts land. All right. So in just a moment here, we're going to hear from our panelists, and they will introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about themselves. So I'll start. My name is Patrick Mitchell. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am a math professor at Merced College, and I've been out since 1996. I was actually thinking about this a little while ago, and next month I will officially be out for 25 years. And I have kind of an interesting coming out story, which I will tell if time permits. But right now I want to go to our panelists. So for the first segment of this panel, and by the way, we welcome Q&A from the audience who are here listening, and we thank you for your time. Anytime that you have a question, something that you would like to address to the panel or to a particular person on the panel, please feel free to go ahead and put that in the, I guess it would be in the Q&A. I am not often on the panelists. I think it's the Q&A that the attendees have access to. And those questions will be relayed to me, and then I will relay them to the panel. Okay, so the first part of this discussion is sort of a three-part question, and I will go around to our panelists, and they'll introduce themselves and then respond to the question. So the first part is to introduce yourself and tell your coming out story. The second part is, when did you first know? And the third part is, who did you tell first? And I'm going to kind of rotate the order of this as we go through. For now, I will just go in the order that the panelists appear on my screen, which would bring me first to Trevor. So, hi, Trevor. Go for it.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to tell my story. When I was first asked by Patrick a few weeks ago, I thought, my gosh, I have to think about this. It's been a journey for sure. Okay, so my name's Trevor Gatz. I am a professor at San Joaquin Delta College, and I teach Introduction to Teacher Education and Techniques of Literacy Development. And I tell you, my story is quite interesting. Having grown up in a very unique household, I was raised primarily by my grandmother. My mother passed away when I was very young. And of course, my father was involved in the picture too. Now, give you context of it, it was a very conservative household because it was partially religion too, at the same time, other conservative mindsets from both sides. And also culturally too, because I'm of a mix of half Caucasian and half Filipino. So I identify more for the Filipino side too, because I have that influence in my life, a majority of. But it was interesting though, because I would say I knew probably around middle school because I found myself becoming more attractive towards the males than the females at the same time. And also having grown up with other brothers too, they always had girlfriends, whatever else. And I guess I was always the one that is kind of shy, stay to myself, and they would always tease me and so on and so forth. And I would kind of think to myself, am I really gay? Am I really queer? Am I this? Am I that? Because they would always pick on me. Not intentionally, but it was just brothers being brothers. And you kind of start thinking about it. And I would say it was a long process. And it wasn't probably until um, I would say I would tell a few people, all my friends kind of knew as I got older. And I would say the first person I really did tell would have to be one of my younger cousins, because I connected with her and she felt like she was more of a little sister to me and we were very close. And I would tell her. So that's kind of my story. It's just kind of interesting of just the different dynamics of everything. And, you want to say who you are, but at the same time, you're afraid to, you're not sure who you're going to, you know, upset or not upset and so on and so forth. And so it's been a process. And still sometimes, in today's age, sometimes even though I'm fully out and whatever, I still kind of think, is this right? Is it not right? Or who can I tell? Who can I not tell? For example, yesterday I was out and about and I went into a business and I knew the owner of the business. And I was with other people and they both said, hey, you guys know each other? We're like, well, yeah, well, we knew each other from, I would say back when we all would hang out and whatever else. It was kind of like the gay little niche that all hung together. So we just kind of acknowledged each other, but we didn't go on beyond that. It's just kind of one of those things. It's like, don't ask, don't tell type thing. So that's kind of the way my story was for a very, very long time. And then finally I got enough confidence to finally say, hey, this is who I am. I was actually at my cousin's wedding and afterwards of the party, and I just finally said, this is who I am. And my family all, said we always knew. We were just waiting for you to tell us. So that's kind of the way it goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. And the thing you said about it being a process kind of clicks with me because even silly little day-to-day things, like I'll be on the phone trying to make an appointment to have somebody come to the house to fix something, and I'll say something about my spouse. Oh, well, when will she be home? What does she do? When does she work? And it's like, no. So it's like you come out a little bit almost every day anytime you're in that situation. Thank you. So next we'll go to Carol. Hi, Carol.
Hey. So, I think as a kid, um, but I'm bi. So it was super confusing because being attracted to everyone, was really confusing. I did not understand what was going on. And I was raised in a very restrictive church environment. And so I see nods. So, and I kept buying into that until well into college. But being a scientist, some of that started to wear thin, and I started questioning it for a lot of different reasons. But so it wasn't really till college that I started kind of thinking, maybe some of this doesn't make as much sense as it used to. And so I started questioning all the parts of the things that I was told in church. But yeah, definitely as a kid, it was always my female teachers who were like, you know, my favorites, and I was pretty starstruck by them. And my friends, I was definitely attracted to my friends. And so I just kind of lived with that. I just thought that that's kind of what friendship was. I just didn't get it. I didn't even get it in college. I was getting flirted with a lot in college in hindsight. And I just wasn't picking up the vibe. And so I think I was missing out on some really good times in college because I had no clue what was happening. And was dating guys and just, pretty clueless. And so eventually I figured it out. But eventually married a man because I looked hard at it. I wanted to have kids. And this was somebody I dated in college. And so I really did have that conversation with myself about, I wanted a place at the table and I just didn't see a way to have that if I didn't kind of go along with society. And definitely, I'm a high school teacher. And so at Tustin High, and at that time, that I just didn't see a way. I was certain that if I got found out at work, that I would be given if not fired, I'd be given the worst schedule. I just would not have any, and it was borne out because I'd seen other people get harassed till they were fired at my site. So I just was like, it's a career buster. It's, there's just no way. My family was pretty cool. Like I said, I kind of figured it out, told my best friend when I was about 20, in my early 20s, because of course I was attracted to her, but I really needed her as my best friend. And so I had to address some of the feelings I was having with her, honestly. We had that good of a relationship that I could talk to her about it. She was closeted too. So she was married to a man at the time. And so she let me know that she had some of those same kind of feelings for women too, but not about me at the time because, she didn't want to go there. And so it was nice to know that she could acknowledge it to me and acknowledge that we could acknowledge each other. But that we could still have our friendship, that it could just be that for us. And that was good. I really needed her as my friend. So it was a few years after that my aunt, who's like my superstar, came to me and said, it would be okay if, you were gay. It would be all right. No, my family's very open about everything. And so, at least on my mom's side, my dad's side, not so much. They're very Southern and they're the churchy ones. So, and then I came out at work about 10 years ago, and it was because they finally hired a gay administrator, and he was out. So I decided I could come out. And in fact, today in class, I'm out with the kids, and I stopped a gay bashing kind of situation at school because, I said, why I'm out? Why are you picking on him? Do you really want to have this conversation with me? And they're like, no. Okay. So I think I told you everything.
Thank you, Carol. And I want to say I have a handful of friends who are either bisexual or pansexual, that identify as one or the other of those. And I have to give you respect. I think in a lot of ways you folks have it harder than people who are gay or lesbian. For example, God forbid you ever get into a monogamous relationship. All of a sudden people are like, oh, okay, so you're really this or you're really that. It's like, no, it's just this happens to be the person.
Yeah, it's really, and I found this when I was trying to online date because a number of lesbians were quite certain that I was going to get like super hungry for penis and just leave them. And I was like, seriously, I don't care about the plumbing. If I care about someone, I care about them. And I think if pansexual had been in the verbiage when I was younger, that I probably would have adopted that. It's probably quite true of me, because I think if I were to fall in love with someone who was trans, I wouldn't care. Or if I fell in love, it doesn't really matter to me, like, what's happening, with your body. If my soul, it sounds so cheesy, but if my soul connects with your soul, we'll find a way to make the rest of it work.
Right. All right. Thank you very much. Oh, I see a question, and I think I'm going to kick this one back to you, Carol, because you can probably explain it better. I felt as recently as just a few months ago that I could not explain pansexual very well. Somebody's asking, I don't know what pansexual is. Can you explain?
Yeah, I'm not an expert, because I wouldn't, I don't know. I mean, everyone probably has a different, someone who's pansexual might have a different explanation for it, but it kind of means that you just don't care if someone is male, female, how they relate to gender, what parts they have. It's really about who the person is and making that heart connection with that person. So it really isn't driven by sexual attraction. Like, your desire for someone isn't driven by sexual attraction. Although I got to say, a beautiful woman or a beautiful man, I might go. But that when it comes down to what really would drive me into a relationship, it has so much more to do with what's in their heart. Because the people that I've chosen to be in relationship with would not be, like what would be typically beautiful people. Do you know what I mean? I just really don't care about the gift wrap. I care about the present inside, it just doesn't really matter. So
Right.
for me, that's what pansexual is. You're not driven by the sex drive for any certain gender.
Yeah, I have a friend who she's about my age, late 40s, and she identifies as bisexual. And we were talking about this on Facebook of all places, and I said that I was trying to wrap my head around exactly what pansexual means. And the place we got to was that, at least for her, it means the same thing as bisexual, because a lot of bisexuals, acknowledge the gender spectrum and all that. Of course, if you go to the root words, bi means two, pan means all,
Yeah.
but it's not necessarily that simple, right? I think to a lot of people they're kind of synonymous.
What it doesn't mean is I don't want to be somebody's third in a relationship.
Right.
I'm not interested in that.
Right. That's
I'm
complete. Yeah. That's,
yeah, and that's what,
polyamorous, or yeah,
it
that's
doesn't mean
something
that.
totally
It
different.
doesn't mean that I can't be true in a relationship, that I'm going to suddenly, I'm extremely loyal and I'm great at monogamy. So it doesn't mean that at all.
Right.
Those are two completely different topics,
Right.
Right.
All right. Thank you, Carol. So let's go to Melanie. Let's hear your coming out story. And what was the other part of it? When did you first know, and who did you first tell? Hi, Melanie.
Hi, Patrick. Thank you for having me today. My name is Melanie Bean, and I'm in the Sacramento City Teachers Association. I really do feel the stories that Trevor and Carol shared. Carol, especially, like the understanding what the vocabulary means, right? Like, if you can make a connection to a word, you're like, that's what I am. Finally, I understand, right? I knew very early on that I was attracted to everybody, but I didn't know what that meant, right? In terms of being a young person and growing up in a fairly conservative part of Southern California. We had a church on every corner. So having those conversations were not something that happened in my household or in my friends' households, you know, and Trevor, you spoke to that. And I think other people were able to label me before I was able to label myself, because when I was 15, my dad asked me at the dinner table, you know, if you're a lesbian, it's okay if you're a lesbian. And I was just like, oh, well, this is great dinner conversation. Thanks, Dad. And I was like, well, I don't think that's what it is. And then my mom flipped out and she's like, no, it's not okay if you're a lesbian. I will have grandchildren. So, I mean, that just kind of stopped the conversation. And after that, my high school principal asked me to start a GSA on the campus. And so again, you know, the adults seemed to see something in me that I wasn't necessarily seeing in myself at the time and didn't know how to label. But you're right, it is, you know, it is a journey because I don't necessarily identify as bisexual anymore due to situations and health and personal trauma and personal growth. I now identify as asexual. So again, you know, sexuality is fluid. It changes, you know, and just like people's identity on the gender spectrum, your sexuality can be fluid as well. And I find more comfort in having a name for something. And I think that's why it's so important to have that coming out story, right? And I guess this is my coming out story for asexuality because I haven't really admitted it to anybody because it didn't really make a lot of sense to me not to have attraction to anybody. That I just needed to spend time with me and be happy with that. So thank you for giving me that opportunity to share with everybody.
All right, that's great. So yeah, not only did you get a coming out story, I guess you got a coming out live on here on Tuesday Takeovers. Thank you, Melanie. All right, so I guess we will go to our second question. And a couple of you touched on this during the first part. The second question is, are you out in your workplace? Why or why not? And this time we'll start with Carol.
Yeah, definitely out in my workplace. Having that, I divorced the guy after I got done with that and waited a little bit to kind of recoup. I decided that I would, I had dated women a little bit before I got married, but I thought, you know, I'm gonna give this a try. So when I went out on online to try to date, I put it out there to date women. I had put out some stuff for men too, but it like they were just, I don't know, nothing was connecting. So, but I was connecting with women. So, and in the process of that, around that same time, the administrator was hired and it seemed more safe. And so one of the first things that I did to come out at work was we have this huge district fundraising dinner and I brought a woman to it. And so that was sort of my coming out with at work. And I had told, I'm really close with my department. And so I had told them, you know, who I was dating and what was up. And so they were all fine with it. They were just surprised because I guess when I was married, I never felt the need to come out at work because why tell everybody I'm bi when I'm married to a dude? You know, it just didn't really make sense. So I didn't feel the need to do that. But then when I started dating women, and then it got awkward. So I thought, okay, well, I should at least tell my friends. So I started with them and then just kind of went to this big party. And anyway, so from then on out, I was out. And it's great because then I'm a role model to the kids. I have no problem sharing what's going on, telling kids that I'm out, you know, being all prideful. So I love the fact that I can just say right out to a kid who's being a jerk, like somebody says, that's so gay. I'll be like, what exactly about that is homosexual? Because I'm not seeing it, homosexual? That was not homosexual. I don't get it, So, they don't know exactly. I don't go into all the bi, pan, whatever. Just be like, I was engaged to a woman, right? They're just like, but somewhere in the room is somebody who hears that and goes, oh, she might be safe to talk to. And sure enough, that's what happens a day or two later. Somebody will come up to me and be like, you're really engaged to a woman? I'm like, yeah. You want to talk about it? And so that's my main reason for being out. I mean, just one, so I don't have to feel weird about the people that I work with. But I mean, I have I have an influence here, and I do work with the GSA here, but I think it really matters that they have a role model of someone who's just okay with who she is, and I don't have to do anything else other than just be me, and me is totally cool with who I am. Completely relaxed, can say it out loud, and they can come talk to me about it.
Yeah, and I think we all know that students appreciate seeing a little of themselves in their teachers, and that goes for ethnicity, race, and also sexual orientation and gender identity, right?
Mhm.
So for that reason, I think it's important to have educators who are out. So thank you for that. Melanie, so you came out live here, so but tell us about your identity as it relates to the workplace, because I know you mentioned previously you had identified as bisexual. So how has that sort of evolved?
Right. So thank you for that. Again, it comes back to the language. For a long time, I just didn't know how to identify. So I identified as queer and said I was part of the LGBTQ community. I identify as part of the queer community. And then we get into, then there has to be a big conversation about language and age and all of that kind of stuff. But, I encourage those conversations just to be open. I am out at work. When I worked in the middle school space, I think my administrators were fearful of parent or community backlash, because every year I'm like, can I start my GSA? Can I start my GSA? And it took about 10 years before I was able to finally have an administrator who said, yes, please, let's start that here on the campus, because they were fearful of, how that would be perceived by family and community members. And strangely enough, that was the largest club on campus. It was the most celebrated club on campus. Every year we did Day of Silence. It was 100% participation. And again, you're talking about kids need to see themselves in their classroom and their educational environment. And they were very supportive of one another. And I'm glad that having someone who was out, even if they didn't know exactly what that meant at the time, provided them that opportunity in their educational space.
All right. Thank you, Melanie. How about you, Trevor? Are you out at work?
Yes, I am. I'm out at work. It's quite interesting. When I was first hired, actually before the interview process, I was actually told not to say that you're gay. I was told that by someone. And I thought, well, why? Why do I have to hide that, And they said, well, you have to be really careful because they may look down upon you, may give you a bad schedule, that may, not score highly on your scoring for your interview. And I was taken back by that because I thought, well, this is who I am, So I remember very carefully in the interview not to say it, you know. But at the same time, yes, I am out. I would say I was out more once a Pride Center opened up on campus. Once one opened up on campus, they hired a Pride administrator, director, what have you. And I knew him from the past and whatever else. And so we kind of connected and we just kind of became friends and what have you. So it kind of became easier to come out in a way at work because there was another space on campus, even though it was primarily for students. I noticed that more staff and faculty were dropping by and hanging out and, you know, interacting. So it's interesting, especially within the San Joaquin Valley. It's very conservative in many ways in certain areas, you know, especially within my area here. Even though you can be who you have to be careful who you say you are around, who, you know, your present group, you know, you have to be mindful of that. And also, as some of you also expressed with your students, I feel that some of my students have a sense of relief once they see, wow, I can identify with you, I can talk to you. And actually, I have helped some students in some crisis moments that needed some resources, and they came to me after class or whatever, and I've helped them. I provided resources to them, and I've got them the appropriate help. I actually had one a few years ago that was thinking suicidal thoughts. So I had to quickly act on that, get some mental health help immediately, and thankfully they were okay afterwards once I got them the resources. But they had gone through a breakup and it just was really bad, and they had no support at home and so on and so forth. So they just came to me because they knew I was a safe space, safe person, and I was able to help them. You know, and some people say, you saved their lives. I said, no, I just helped them. You know, I was there. That's what I do as an educator. You know, I love my students and I'm going to take care of them in any way, shape, or form. I don't care what age they are. They're still my children in a way. So, you know, being out at work is, you know, fun at the same time. At the same time, it can be kind of scary of who you're around, like I say, and what you say. And also just recently at my college, we started a group between staff and faculty that are kind of meeting, of course, virtually right now, but hopefully in person at some point, a kind of a support group. And we're trying to form a group, like a club of some sort, to support one another. And it's actually interesting. The first time I attended that was a few months ago, and we just had a meeting just recently. And the first time it was like, wow, I had no idea. You know, that a lot of people were on there. It was kind of shocking to see that. So it was really it was heartwarming too to see the support, you know, on there. So that's my story.
Thank you. And I was just about to say that I noticed in the chat that there was a question for Melanie. And Melanie, I see that you saw that question and you've responded to it. The question was about were her students specifically asking for a GSA? And it looks like you said that at some point they started asking for one, right? Maybe not from the very beginning.
They didn't know what to ask for. So like Trevor was saying, you know, the kids always find the safe adult to come talk to. They knew they needed a space, but they didn't know what to call it. So once they started hearing what was happening in the high schools, they're like, that's what we need here. And it took some very supportive parents coming to the site saying, how come we don't have this for our young people, before administrators were finally willing to start that club up on campus.
All right, thank you. So we're the schedule is just working out perfectly here. We now go on to our third and final question for discussion, and then in the last 10 minutes we'll open it up for more Q&A. The third question, and to me maybe the most difficult one, but is how can we support our LGBTQ plus colleagues? If you can, share an experience where you have felt most supported by a colleague. So for this one, we'll start with Melanie. Melanie?
Sure. You know, this is the one where you always think of all the non-examples, like what people did not to support you first.
Yeah.
So, you know, the like, please don't, we're not the token people that have all the answers to all the questions type thing. But I think, Carol, you touched on this, is that there is that expectation that we're in these heteronormative relationships, right? And everybody is married and it's a man and a woman. And that is very difficult if that's not the relationship that you have. And I think the most supportive thing that colleagues have done have been to ask me, you know, are you in a relationship? And is this something you're comfortable talking about, right? They didn't make the assumption that, you know, just because I have a child that I automatically have, you know, a significant other who's male. Which I did at the time, right? But, you know, they actually gave me that space to have the conversation with them. And I really appreciated that.
That's great. Thank you, Melanie. Trevor, how about you? How can we support our LGBTQ plus colleagues, and what was a time that you've particularly felt supported?
I would say to help our fellow colleagues is just be there for them, especially if they're going through the process of coming out. Some of them may be fearful, some of them may have some anxiety, or just, even fear of having a job. What if you come out completely and you're going to get fired, and so on and so forth. So just be there to support them. I would say that would be how we can support them the most, just to be there as a friend, someone to call, someone to text, in the middle of the night. Hey, I need to talk to you. There's just to have that lifeline there is always a huge support. I have had that. I would say that's how my experience would be, where I felt the most supported by other colleagues, because I've had that lifeline. So I'm going to pay it forward to my other colleagues too, and provide that to them and just be there for them. I tell them, hey, my address, where I'm at, call me, call or text anytime. I'll be there for you, to support you, because sometimes we feel that we're alone, and we have no one to call on. Even though we have all of our support around us, we still sometimes just feel that lonely feeling of, who do I reach out to? Who's the right person that's fully going to understand what I'm going through, so it's just be there for them, be their friend, so that's how I would say to support colleagues.
All right. Thank you, Trevor. Carol, over to you.
I think for me, the thing that I've appreciated most about my colleagues is that they just treated me like they always did before. So even after I came out, I was so terrified that they'd known, because I've been teaching at the same high school in Orange County for, I think I'm going on like 25 years now or something like that. So these are people I've known a long time. And I was worried that it was not going to go well, that people that, were my other family were going to reject me. And they didn't. They've been there through everything. They were there through my divorce and supported me through that. The woman who I was engaged to died last year of a chronic illness made worse by COVID. And they propped me up all through that, all through her illness, all through, going through her death. And so I think, just being treated like I'm normal, like it's normal to be whoever you're with, whatever that looks like. It's normal to have problems. It's normal to fight with your partner, just like they fight with their wives and husbands. It's normal to be pissed off that you have to take care of somebody who's sick. It's normal to be, having your partner fight with your kids because it's a stepmom situation, whether it's, or stepdad. I mean, it's the same thing as if no matter who steps into your family. All of those kind of things that I was going through are all things that everybody goes through, no matter how you live your life. If you bring another person into your life, it's all the same issues. I think that the fact that my friends recognize that and just were like, okay, you're going through life, and they just treated me like they treated everybody else who was going through life. Felt really good. I felt supported just because they just kept being my friends, and they just kept supporting me the way they would have if, I was doing the same stuff with a man, you know? So I think that that's the main thing. Just keep being a friend. If you act like a friend, you're a friend. It doesn't matter what your friend's going through. Your friend just needs a friend. So, if you're acting right, you're doing right.
Yeah, and since we have a few minutes, we'll get ready here in a few minutes to take more questions from the audience. But I'll respond to this one since we have a little bit of time. When I came out, I was a full-time graduate student. I figured out my last year of college that I wanted to teach college. Before that, I had been planning on teaching high school. And I went to school in New Jersey, so it works a little different there. You pick up your credential while you're getting your bachelor's degree. It's not two separate programs. So when I decided that, no, I'm not going to teach high school, I'm going to go to graduate school and teach college, I had to technically change my major, get rid of student teaching, pick up a few other classes that I needed for my degree. And then I went to graduate school, and I was in a PhD program full time. I was engaged to a woman, and kind of ever since I could remember, I felt I would sometimes feel sexually attracted to men, but I had convinced myself that was true for all guys experienced that, and it was just something they didn't talk about. So I figured it was normal. I went on dating girls and women, and then and then the internet came along, and it became very easy to sort of mingle with certain crowds, where I would have never ever even thought about like going into a gay bar or anything like that. Anyway, not to tell my whole coming out story, I really want to respond to this particular question about feeling supported. So I was engaged to a woman, figured out that I was not heterosexual, and that it was not going to work being married to a woman. So, and then I went on the internet, I met a man, we fell in love, broke off my engagement. I'm still taking graduate courses full time. So it was kind of one crisis after another. And when I think about how I felt supported, there are two people that I went to graduate school with that I am not in super close contact with anymore. They're on my Facebook, but every time I think about either one of these two people, I just get this super just warm feeling, because I remember how they were there for me when I was dealing with certain crises that were sort of tangential to my coming out. One of those situations where, oh my God, this is happening, and they just like drop everything and come over and sit with you. So for me, that's what it was. I really needed that at certain times. So let's see. If a student came to you, and I'll just put this out for anybody, and said, I think that I might be fill in the blank, whether it's gay or lesbian or bisexual, pansexual, asexual, whatever. and they were looking for advice about how to come out. What would you tell them? I'm not sure I have an answer to that question, so I'll just put it out there. Or maybe you've been in that situation.
With high schoolers, I usually ask what their home is like because I don't want to get anybody kicked out of their house, you know. This area, it can be like there's Orange County can be conservative, and so I have seen youths get kicked out of their house for that. So that's usually my first question, like, well, how would your parents take it? You know, and everybody's always scared about how their parents would take it, but I usually do ask, you know, do you have other family members who are gay or lesbian? You know, has anybody else come out in your family? How did it go? What did your parents say about that? You know, I usually start asking some of those kinds of questions just to help them get a reality check on how bad it would be or how okay it would be. And then I usually steer them to some websites if they haven't already been there, you know. We have a great center in Orange County, so I usually direct them over there, get some support. Pre-pandemic, they had lots of good programs where the kids could go in person and kind of get with a crew. And so start getting some support, you know, that might be more in tune with their age, you know, and their needs and more directed at all of their needs than I might be. I mean, I'm an amazing educator, but you know, I'm not a therapist. I'm not, you know, I don't have all of the answers that they might need, that where the OC Center has everything on speed dial for them. So I usually try to make sure they have all the resources in their hands that they need. And I always stay available, but, you know, I try to connect them wherever possible and remind them about our GSA so they can meet other kids on campus that are like-minded.
Yeah, and you make a really important point. It's so important to know, you know, what are you capable of doing, and once you've reached that point, it's like, okay, and now I'm going to find other resources for you that have, you know, the expertise that I don't. And the other thing you said that made me think of something is pronouns. A lot of my sort of coming out. So I've been out to my colleagues forever. I have really struggled with being out to my students, which sounds kind of weird because I teach higher ed. I guess I always thought, you know, well, this is just going to be a distraction, blah, blah, blah. What does it have to do with math? Teaching online has made it much easier for me to be out to my students. You know, we do the intro discussion the first week. And I talk about, I live, you know, in Merced with my partner, and, you know, we have this many dogs and this many cats and blah, blah, blah. And I also started about 2 years ago asking students for their pronouns and giving my pronouns. And when you talk about, you know, number one question, do you think it's safe to come out to your family? I remember seeing this form, and maybe a lot of you have seen it, that K-12 educators use when they ask students for their pronouns. It's 3 questions. What are your pronouns? May I use these pronouns in front of the class, and may I use these pronouns when I call home? Right? So yeah, when you talked about coming out to your family, that's something that I thought of. It's not something that we have to think about too much in higher ed, but definitely for K-12. All right. Let's see. So at this point, we're down to the last 10 minutes. We are open to any questions from the audience, or if the panel wants to chime in with, you know, an answer to that last question. It's kind of anything goes for these last few minutes. I'll mention one other thing. Since I've been out to my students these last couple years teaching online, I have found that a lot more of my students are out to me. This semester, I noticed that, again, with the first week introductions, and there may be others, but I've picked up on one of my students is a gay man, one is a lesbian, and one is a trans woman. So I don't remember ever having that many LGBTQ students that I knew about in one semester. And I think it's likely, it might have something to do with the fact that I'm out to them.
I think times are changing too, because the kids are a lot more open about where they're at than they were even 10 years ago. I've seen the progression. And I had the same situation as Melanie, that I asked for a lot of years to start a GSA before I got the green light from administration. And so I think just a lot of years of having GSA available and having, very open public conversations and having different celebrities and things, and having a lot of access to internet and socials. The kids are at a different place than they've ever been before, and so they're totally fine. Most of them know what it means to show your pronouns, and it's us adults that have to catch up to them.
Uh-huh.
I want to kind of piggyback on that. I have a high school daughter, and she talks about her friends and their relationships pretty openly, and talking about, well, my best friend's girlfriend, and it's not a big deal like it was, right? It's just, it's part of the culture, and the kids are doing okay. And I've been really lucky to be in a district that has held a yearly youth leadership conference for our LGBTQ youth. And I learned something from the kids every single year. And, they taught me what it meant to be aromantic. They taught me all sorts of new words. They taught me about all sorts of cool apps. And so, I really do find that our kids are leading us into a space where they're fine. It's just we all have to catch up. But what I have found recently is that there has been some fear amongst educators about being their true self, just because of the public backlash in a number of ways. And I think that's another way that we can support one another and our young people, is just being aware of what legal protections there are out there and sharing that with our young people, right? Like, nobody has the right to out you. You have the right to be called by your name and your pronouns. And that's not necessarily easy information to find as a young person, and it's not something that we get as educators in like a monthly newsletter from anybody. So that's why I'm incredibly thankful for, CTA and the caucus and different organizations for making sure that that we're protected, and that we also know our rights and our students' rights.
Hear, hear. All right. Any final thoughts as we wrap this up? Looking to see if we get any last minute questions trickle in. I guess we'll kind of hang out here for the next couple of minutes in case we see anything. But I want to thank all of you for being here and sharing your stories. And we really got a good sort of variety of experiences, identities. I enjoyed learning about all of you. Yeah. This was a lot of fun.
Are any of you going to be at the conference this coming weekend?
I will be there. I believe, Trevor, you're going, right?
I was planning on going, but I actually canceled because I'm going the following weekend and walking in the parade.
Ah, okay.
Yes. So
Fantastic.
I didn't, it sounds crazy, but I just didn't want to do 2 weekends back to back with traveling. A little too much. So,
Yeah, I'm a glutton for punishment. I'm actually doing both.
oh boy. Well, then I'll see you in a few weeks then.
Yes, I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yes.
What about Carol, Melanie? Are you going to be in Palm Springs this weekend?
I will be. I'm looking forward to it. It looks like Michael and Lee will be as well in the chat, so I'm super excited that we get to connect with our people this weekend and next weekend too.
Yes. Yeah, it'll be good to see you when we're not, boxes on a screen.
For sure. Carol, will you be joining us?
I have a packed weekend. It's our district's Dino Dash, which is another big fundraiser, and it's my grandson's. Well, it's not his first Halloween, but he's 1 year old, and so we're doing stuff. So
That's exciting.
very exciting.
Yeah, Halloween is I'm a little disappointed that we just moved to a new house in August, and it would have been nice to see what Halloween is like here. We'll find out next year. All right, well, thank you all again. And Carol, we'll look forward to meeting you at some point down the road. Trevor, I'll see you in 2 weeks. Melanie, I'll see you this weekend. Thank you all in the audience for attending, and enjoy the rest of your week.